Number 8, the Honourable David Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Does he have confidence in the decisions of all of his ministers who were involved in the process for the sale of the Crafar farms?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, yes, I'm confident that the two ministers involved, the Minister of Land Information and the Associate Minister of Finance, exercised their duties fairly and impartially under the Overseas Investment Act 2005.
The Honourable David Parker.
Was it within the discretion of the Minister of Land Information to decline the approval of the Crafar farm sale under the Overseas Investment Act? No, I didn't.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the advice that I've seen is that the ministers have to give due regard to Section 16 and 18 of the Act. If they are confident that Sections 16 and 18 of the Act have been appropriately met, then they do need to accept the application. That was the view of both the Overseas Investment Office and the two ministers.
The Honourable David Parker.
Did the Prime Minister say in 2010 that his government's changes to overseas ownership regulations, and I quote, increased ministerial flexibility to consider a wider range of issues when assessing overseas investment in sensitive land? And if so, why didn't ministers exercise that flexibility and decline the overseas sale of the Crafar farms?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, yes, that's absolutely correct what I said in 2010. There was a wider range of issues, but in fact the bid met the conditions and criteria set out in the Overseas Investment Act. The truth of it is the Act did need tightening up and the number of regulations expanding, because when David Parker was the Minister of Lands between 2006 and 2008, he actually approved the sale of 410,000 hectares of farmlands. That's 4 times the total amount of land approved for sale over the last 3 years of the National Government and 51 Crafar farms.
The Honourable David Parker.
Does the Prime Minister see a difference between an applicant like James Cameron moving here, living indefinitely with his family, working here, paying taxes, and the largest ever sale of the multiple Crafar dairy farms to a foreign-based company with future profits going overseas? Or does he agree with Mr Williamson that opposition to the Crafar farm sales is bordering more on racism?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I believe that both of the bids met the law as it was written by Labor in 2005. In 2005, Labor didn't have a condition that you have to live here. Labor didn't campaign on that condition in 2011. And interestingly enough, David Shearer didn't know his position on the day this came out last week because he had 2 positions in one day.
The Honourable David Parker.
Does the Prime Minister think it is a good outcome for New Zealand that the previously New Zealand-owned Crafar farms, until now operated by private enterprise, will now be overseas-owned and farmed by a government company?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, firstly, those farms were in a very bad state of repair. And I think as somebody who has argued about environmental issues, I would have thought David Parker actually would have wanted those farms to be more environmentally sustainable. The second thing, Mr. Speaker, is I suppose the way I would sum this up is I would make the following statement. And then we have New Zealand First, which is opposed to any purchase by any foreigner of any asset, investment or land in New Zealand as the Minister.
Point of order, the Right Honourable Winston Peters.
Mr. Speaker, you and I both know that he cannot do that. And he should be told to desist and get back to doing what he should be doing, answering the question.
Order. Well, I'll hear briefly the Honourable Leader of the House.
Mr. Speaker, in answering a question, any minister can surely refer to a learned piece of advice for the House.
Order. I think the point that Right Honourable Winston Peters makes is fair enough. The question was asked by a member of the Labour Party, and to bring another political party into an answer is not the wisest thing to do. It's going to lead to disorder. We saw it lead to disorder. The honourable member got to his feet at the same time as I did, because I could see what was going to happen. I think it's unwise to do that. I'd ask the Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Prime Minister, please not to bring another political party who's not been involved in the questioning into the answer. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, let me continue in this way then. In 2005, when the law was established by Labor, in the third reading speech in this House, Clayton Cosgrove said of it, as the Minister pointed out, that is totally illogical, the ability to stop a foreigner in having any investments in New Zealand. And he went on to say, the last one out switches the lights off if we call a halt to any international investment in land in this country. You see, in government, they do one thing, and on the populist track in opposition, they say a completely different thing.
Question number 9, Shane Arden.